and we'll get started in a few minutes. Actually, I'm going to keep the recording paused for a few minutes. So I will be recording this so that I'll send this out to you at the end of the day. Anyone who registered for this session or attended the session should get the recording. And if you don't, if there was something that you attended earlier this week and you didn't receive an email with the recording, we are posting all of our recordings on the Brightspace resources page. So let me see if I can open that really quick. On our Brightspace resources page, under the training calendar, where you get to see all of the things that we're doing, if you click on the training catalog, where we have a list of kind of every workshop that we have and the description of that workshop, we've included the recordings under each of those trainings. So you can watch these recordings as well if you've missed anything. So that's on our Brightspace resources page. On the training calendar, you can click on the training catalog and you can get all of these recordings. So today's session is on breaking Zoom and Brightspace burnout. I think the title of it may have just talked about Brightspace burnout, but because we've been on Zoom all summer in probably your personal and professional lives, we want to talk about some tips in terms of breaking that Zoom burnout too. Some of these things, if you've been on trainings this week, you may already be familiar with. But hopefully we're going to have an opportunity to share ideas with each other as well so that you guys can share your expertise over it, which I'm excited about. We're going to start with a quick icebreaker just because I want to show you guys nonverbal communication in Zoom. Then we'll talk about the tips to break Zoom burnout. After we go through some of those tools that you can use, we're going to talk about some tips to break Brightspace burnout. And then I'll have a slide with summary and resources. And just a quick note, some of the items that we're going to be talking about in Zoom may need to be set up in your settings. So if you go to host a Zoom session and you don't see some of the same things, you can always go to your CCC Zoom account, which the website is ccc.edu, no dot between those, .zoom.us. And that's kind of your back end to access into all of your Zoom meetings and recordings and all of that kind of stuff. So real quick for the icebreaker, I want you to do one of these three things, and I'm going to open my window so I can see anyone who's doing all of these things on the side. Let me get this set up. So I want you to either using reactions, which is in the bottom toolbar of your window. You should see something called reactions, and you can either, you can give me an applause, that's one option, or on the participants window, so again in that toolbar at the bottom, there's one icon that's called participants. If you open that, you can give me a green check, or you can give me a thumbs up by going to more and then thumbs up. Or you can open the chat window and type a positive statement either to everyone or privately to a colleague, like nice job, well done, I miss you, how's it going, whatever it is. So I want you to do one of those three things now so that I can see when they're happening. And if you've done it already and you were using reactions, do it again so I can see the reactions come up because those disappear, whereas your thumbs up and check boxes on the participant window stay until I clear them out. And if you can't figure it out at all, put a message in the, well, then come on the mic if you can't figure it out at all, and I'll try to figure that out for you. But it looks like everyone's having, everyone's able to do this. So the reason I start with this is it does require a little bit of multitasking for you as an instructor, but it's a nice way to kind of just pulse check students and see if they're paying attention or you know, supporting each other, or using something, using an indicator for you if you have students asking you questions. So one of the things, if you've been on my presentations this week, that I started doing this week just because of my experience with it, is it's really hard to follow the chat as it's happening. So I'll tell my faculty who are in those trainings with me to put at Elissa before asking me a question. And then I can sift through the chat really fast, knowing which questions are for myself. So that's a way that when if I'm teaching my class and I'm looking at the chat window and students are just having conversations with themselves, but not privately, I can see if someone is asking me a specific question. They can say, you know, at instructor or something without, they can still chat you privately, but it's a way to kind of filter that out for you to see what it is that you're looking for. Thank you guys for the compliments. I'm seeing all those too. That's a nice thing. I hope you message private people some nice compliments as well. The other thing, those thumbs up and the reactions are help to support each other. There's also a hand raised icon that'll help you track if students have questions. But what's really helpful about this is you kind of try out the thing that works for you. It is really hard to manage an entire class if people kind of interrupt you by coming on the mic, or they don't, someone's raising their hand, but you never told them to use that raise hand feature, and so you're not looking for it ever because you're just lecturing. So find the thing that's going to help you as you're going through your lectures, or kind of finding time to stop between your settings or your lectures. So some 3 tips that we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail. The first one is a thought, an idea to pre-record your lectures or lessons and use your synchronous sessions for discussion, clarification, or activities. We've all been on trainings this week especially, where one could argue this is very lecture-based. Like, there's so much material that I have to impart onto you. I haven't left room for like group discussions or the ability to let you guys share, that it's really very one way, very sage on the stage. And one of the advantages of using Zoom is that you can hop in a Zoom meeting by yourself at any time, and you can record yourself talking to the camera or lecturing over slides, and you can have students watch that before they come to a synchronous session. So then if that's the task where they know, you know, they're going to watch that the night before, and then in the morning when you do hold a synchronous session, that can be more for discussion, clarification, or say, do you remember when you watched this piece, this is what I was referring to. Also, something to think about is not recording hour-long lectures, but chunking your lectures into smaller periods of time, small chunks of time. So when you're doing, even if you're pre-recording those, record like 1 lecture or lesson at a time. So maybe 15 minutes of something. So you can create all of these recordings that students can watch without having to watch the hour-and-a-half long recording that you did of a live session, which can be distracting because when someone goes to watch that later, you know, there's students asking questions or you pausing. And many of you may have already experienced this with me. If you've received one of my recordings, that will be going along, and then someone might ask a question and it kind of takes us off topic. And so by pre-recording these things, you can be very specific and succinct into what you're trying to say and let students watch that without distraction, and then use your sessions for discussion and clarification and activities.
I'm so sorry.
Just check in the chat.
I am,
yeah.
I want to just bring a little question in. I usually record all my stuff. Like, I just put that setting to do record the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
But my students really love like being in Zoom with me because we read together and we do whatever. But how does pre-recording really work? What was your best steps of how would you pre-record? Would you pre-record in Zoom and then share it in Brightspace, or how would you do it, or email it, or?
Well, the files are long, but you can record. I mean, the files can be large depending on how long of a recording that you've done. So my recommendation, so the things that I do when I record snippets for an instructor who I can't figure out how to do this thing, so I will literally just launch a Zoom meeting by myself, share my screen, record myself going through the steps. And those, if they're short enough like that, you know, a 5-minute video can be emailed. Anything longer than that, I can choose to record. You would record on the cloud, which makes it easier. You get a link then once the recording is done, as well as a password to share with students. Or if you use your integrated Zoom link. So if in Brightspace, if you've connected to your Zoom account there, so that the link that you use and the recordings that you use are saved right in that class, then they can just go to the recordings tab of Zoom inside of Brightspace. It completely depends on what your comfort level is with those tools and knowing what you're doing. So if I was taking myself out of it, what I would do personally, if I didn't really understand all of those things, is I'd do a Zoom recording, I'd record to my computer, and I would literally just upload that to Brightspace as an item, like under content, upload, create video, and you can upload the entire MP4 there. That would be kind of if I was not comfortable with all of the integration tools and not knowing what to do, but I knew I wanted to record these short videos.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for that question. The second tip here is to use polls or nonverbal reactions to pulse check. So polls we'll talk about in a little bit, and I'll have an example for you to experience. And those get set up in Zoom when you're scheduling the meeting. You have to set those up in your cccedu.zoom.us account. But they're a nice way to kind of break up your sessions with things to ask students and provide that feedback to students. You'll experience it in a second. I will also say here, you do not need to use Zoom polls during a Zoom session. You can use any kind of outside polling tool either. Some of you may be familiar with something called polleverywhere.com, where students can, and I'll put it in the chat what that is, but where students can, polleverywhere.com, where students can connect to it with their phone, and so then you can get all the results back to yourself and you can share your screen and show them the results. You don't have to use Zoom polls. There's lots of different tools that you can use, but polls, whether you use them in Zoom or outside of Zoom, is a nice way to also engage with your students without them having to all come on the speaker and say, this is my answer. And then with the nonverbal reactions, you can do the same thing. If you just want to do a pulse check, you know, give me a green check if this, give me a red X if that. I would stay away from those questions of like, give me a green check if you understand, because students aren't always going to self-identify if they don't understand. But using the green checks or the raise hands or any of those nonverbal cues to help you kind of gauge where students are at. And then breakout rooms. Breakout rooms will really help you break Zoom burnout because you're less on the stage and having to manage the entire process. If you create some activities where you can put students away in another room to do specific tasks, so to talk about a discussion topic. And we'll talk about breakout rooms a little bit further in terms of the technology of it. Just making sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay. Real quick, especially if you are going to do some recorded lectures, I do recommend turning your camera on. I recommend turning your camera on at any time, but just really be aware. You want to practice before you get into this, but be aware of where the camera is and make eye contact with the camera because that's your connection with the students. So sometimes you'll see me, I look off to the side because that's where my chat and where you guys are so I can see you, because I have a second monitor over there, but I can tell when I do that, it looks weird because I'm not talking to you anymore. So just keep an eye on where your face is and where your camera is. So you can look at yourself and you can see how you're looking. And so just make sure we've all been on a Zoom with family where you can't see all of their face and you're like, Mom, lift it up. So just be aware of that because it does affect how students are communicating with you or how they're engaging with you. Even if they don't turn their camera on, if they can't see your face fully and read your lips and have that kind of experience, it really pulls from it. Another thing with Zoom before we get into the breakout rooms and the polls is this idea of speaker view versus gallery view versus share screen and when to use which. So speaker view is when we started, or if I click stop share for a second, let me do that to give you guys the experience. If you see me right now where my face is huge and everyone else is on the top, you're in speaker view in Zoom. So what that means is you're looking at whoever's speaking is going to be the largest and everyone else will kind of show up on the side. In the top right corner, it will say, if you're in speaker view, it'll say gallery view. And if you clicked on gallery view, that would then shift until you can see everyone in little boxes on your screen. Speaker view is really helpful for lectures, student presentations, if you need to demo something. So if I need to show you my nectarine and we're doing an experiment with this, speaker view is helpful for that because students can see you and only you and they're not being distracted by other faces. Gallery view is really nice if you're trying to have a conversation with your students, so that once students all turn on their cameras, if they choose to, however you interact with your students, doing gallery view really lets you see everyone at one point in time, and it's helpful for discussions. It's helpful for when you're in an office hour with students or a group of students, so that you're all kind of the same size and you're in it together. And then screen share view, when you're sharing your screen like I'm doing here, I'm sharing this PowerPoint, that's helpful when you have to demonstrate something or you're showing them how to do something on like a Word document that you have or a PowerPoint that you have, or you're navigating Brightspace and you're showing them how to get to place to place. And so when that happens, it doesn't matter if you had gallery view or speaker view up. For you and for your students, the images of all of your students show up on the side or on the top or on the bottom. You can kind of drag them around. So there's usefulness for all of these types, but also know that your view is specific to you. So if you wanted to have a discussion and you don't know if students are seeing you as a speaker view or a gallery view, make a comment like, oh, in the top right corner, you can change the speaker view to gallery view and then you can see us all together. That also can prompt people to turn on their cameras. If they're all looking at everyone, it feels like they're part of a class. That can be really distracting. I'm going to say when you're trying to lecture, that view for yourself can be really distracting because you can see people moving or sitting in their bed or falling asleep or whatever it is if they do have their cameras on. So just keep that in mind. You can always switch what view you have in that top right-hand corner. There was a question about polls that I want to pause on. And this is specific to the Polls Everywhere tool, which is not the tool in Brightspace in Zoom. But the poll results, you can share your screen as the instructor when those results come in. So you can share them on behalf of the student. I don't know if in the app itself or when students vote, if there's a way to like now send those results to the students. That's, I'd have to go into it to answer that question. Let me just make sure I don't have any others. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do a quick poll, and I'm going to do a real Zoom poll. So I had a slide here if I wasn't able to get the poll working, but I was able to set it up before we started in here. So I'm going to launch a poll in Zoom. It's going to pop up on your screen, and it's going to ask you, what are the ways you plan to use Zoom? What are the ways you plan to use Zoom? And it's I hope it's multi-select. I can't remember if I set it up for one choice or many choices. I meant to set it up for many choices, but I have a feeling I may have set it up for one choice. So pick your top choice.
Elissa, it is for one choice, and I would like to know how to make it multiple choice, because I can't do it.
I'll show you. I'll show you. I'll show you once we get through this. So again, I set this up incorrectly, but still vote what the top way you plan to use Zoom. Let's do it that way. I probably can anticipate what the total answer is going to be here. So what I'm seeing here, which I'll show you on another screen, is I can see that 22 out of 40 students, so 55% of you have voted so far. And I'll wait until we get to about, 65, 70%. So a poll should have popped up on your screen, and you choose the top way, because I didn't give you a chance to pick many, which I had hoped to do. Okay, I got 70% of you. So I'm going to end the poll so no one else can vote, and then I'm going to share results with you. So this is going to pop up on your screen. You'll see how everybody voted. And we can see that 46% of us are using it as a tool to lecture synchronously. That's our top way we plan to use it. There may be other ways that we're using it, but that's by and large how folks on this call is their top way that they might be using it. So this is a way you do have to set these up in advance. So let me stop sharing those results and kind of talk about that. So when you set up a poll in advance, you will have a new icon in your taskbar called polls, and you create those polls ahead of time from the meetings settings. So once you schedule your meeting, regardless of if you schedule it in Brightspace using the Zoom integration in Brightspace, or if you go to the website, the cccedu.zoom.us website, once you schedule a meeting and click save, you will then get this pop-up that says add a poll. You haven't created any polls yet, add a poll. The polls are specific to a meeting. So if you create a new meeting for every class, you have to recreate the polls. Even if you, yeah, I already said that. If you create the polls from Brightspace, you still have to add the polls from the CCC Zoom account. When you're creating the polls, this is what it looks like. So you put a link in for your poll, and you can do something that'll kind of trigger you if that's first poll, second poll, third poll. So it's easy for you to figure out which poll you're trying to show. They can be anonymous if you choose. So if you check that box, you won't be able to see who chose what. If you don't choose that box, I haven't seen where you pull that. I'm assuming it's in the reports section of Brightspace or Zoom. And then you would type your question here. So this is where I typed, tell me the ways in which you plan to use Zoom. The single choice or multiple choice is where you select, if it's weird that they use this terminology, but single choice is one option you can choose and multiple choice is a multi-select option. So for that question that came up, this is where you change it to multi-select.
I've actually done that, Elissa. I've done that and it has not worked. So I'm not sure if it's a problem with Zoom. And I've never been able to find the, when it's not anonymous, I've never been able to find that either. So neither of those features have worked for me.
So I have used this one just last week. It worked for me. In terms of where you get the results, let me take that as a takeaway so I can provide information on how to find the results when they're not anonymous. Also, speaking of not anonymous, it might have to do with whether or not the student is logged into their CCC account when they launch Zoom. So let me take both of those away in terms of how you find those results. Thank you for the question. You can have up to 10 options on a single question, but you don't have to use them all. And only hosts can create polls. So not co-hosts or participants, you have to be the host of the meeting to create and launch the poll. If you've created that poll and you're in your meeting now and you don't see that poll link at the bottom, it might be because you haven't logged into Zoom before you launched your class meeting and it doesn't know that you're the host. That happens too. Okay. So now let's talk about breakout rooms. I'm going to have you guys experience this and talk a little bit amongst yourselves. Let me just check the time. Yeah. Breakout rooms allow you to split your class into groups, and you can do this for small group discussion. You can do this for like sync, pair, share kind of activities. You can choose different numbers of groups and different numbers of students in groups so that you can break it up. It's not always the same number of groups because you can do one that's just 2 students together, and then you can do another session of group work where you put them in groups of 4, things like that. Groups can be assigned randomly or predetermined by you, and predetermined by you means you choose on the fly when you create the breakout rooms who is in which room. So random, or that you get to choose who's where. The first time you do this, I advise you to randomly assign them unless you already have preset groups. But it does take some time to kind of like sift them in. So if you randomly assign them, it just puts them in, they go have a conversation. That's what I'm going to do with you guys. Just going to see how many people I have in here. As the host, you can go in and out of each group to visit with the small group of students. So you can't monitor all of them simultaneously because they actually are in their own Zoom rooms. Like you literally disappear, and you probably all experienced this week or during faculty development week at your colleges. So you're in your own room, your students are in their own room having a conversation, but you can pop into them and they can ask for help. So there's a little icon when you're in a breakout room that says ask for help, and the teacher will get a message that says, or the host will get a message that says someone's inviting you to their room so that you can come in and answer any questions that they might have. You can also control how many groups there are or how many students are in each group and when the students come out of those groups. So you kind of manage all of that kind of stuff. Some of it can be set up to be automated, like you can set it up to close automatically in so many minutes, or you just close it when you're ready to bring them back to the group. Some other things to know: only hosts can create breakout rooms, only hosts can create breakout rooms. And I say this because if you do invite a colleague to kind of help you through things and be a co-host with you, they can't create the breakout rooms on your behalf. You have to create them, and they can launch them once they're created. But the creation all happens live on a meeting. Only users, this is less of an issue, I just want to mention, but only users with access to the Zoom desktop client or the Zoom mobile app on their phone can join breakout rooms. So if someone is on Zoom through their browser, and that's typically only happens if your Zoom client isn't working for some reason or hasn't been updated. It's really hard to get to the Zoom browser unless it's forcing you there or using Zoom in a browser. But those folks can't join a breakout room from the browser. And we talked a little bit about hosts. Oh, I didn't actually. Hosts can communicate with individual participants of a single, hosts cannot communicate with individuals participants of a single breakout room. That's a typo right there. You can only communicate with a single individual in a breakout room if you go into that breakout room and then go chat them privately or talk to them on the mic. You can't send a private message to a student in a breakout room who's already over there. You'd either have to take them out of the breakout room to come back. So you can only communicate with students when you're in the breakout room that they're in. You can, however, broadcast a public message to students in all the rooms. And I'll show you screenshots of this after you guys experience it. Also, if participants miss or they close the invitation to join a breakout room, or they get kicked out of Brightspace or Zoom, sorry, I'm going to do that a lot. If they get kicked out of Zoom, and you know sometimes that happens to us and we get reconnected, the invite will remain, so they can launch and go into the breakout room that they're supposed to be in without you having to do anything extra. There's also this feature, which I like, when you first launch a breakout room and send everyone to their rooms. There's a way to either set it that they're forced into their breakout rooms or that they get a pop-up saying, go join the breakout room. And it's a nice way, if you use that second option, to check who has checked out, meaning mentally. If they don't join the breakout room, you can be like, hey, John, what's going on? Like, you having trouble? And it may be that they like stepped away from their computer or they're not paying attention or whatever it might be. So that's a nice way to kind of make sure folks are paying attention. I'm going to show you this one screen of how this works before I send you off to kind of have your own conversations about Zoom breakout or Zoom burnout kind of feedback. This is the experience that you have as the instructor when you do breakout rooms. I'm going to show you these screenshots and I'm going to walk through them, but what I seriously recommend is you getting with a colleague or two and playing around with breakout rooms to see how that experience works and kind of experience it at least once on the fly, with a colleague. You certainly can do this off the bat with your students if they're willing to kind of bear with you, but it makes you feel more confident if you're able to experience it with someone. So on your toolbar, when you're the host, there is either breakout rooms will show up right here where you see this more button, or it'll say more and all that's in there is breakout rooms. It depends on how maximized your screen is. You won't see it now because you guys are all participants. So when you click breakout rooms, it pops up this first window that says assign a number of participants. So this first one is how many participants are in your meeting. So when I launch this, it's going to tell me assign 39 participants into, and this is where I change how many rooms I want you to be in. So this is where I would say, I want you guys in groups of 4. So I'm going to say into 10, because that's 40 divided by 4, into 10 rooms. And then I'm going to choose automatically, meaning I'm not going to manually put you in those rooms. I'm going to let the system randomly put you into the 10 rooms. And then I'm going to click create rooms. Once that happens, when I'm doing automatic, it really skips over to this one where I can see everyone and what rooms they're in. And then right now, instead of close all rooms, it would say launch. It would basically say start the breakout rooms. If I were to manually assign students, it would look more like this one, and I would then assign students to their appropriate rooms. This window here, once I've launched the rooms and sent you guys there, this is where I would join those rooms if I wanted to. So next to each room, I have a join button as the instructor to kind of go into that room. If I wanted to move a student to a different room, so let's say Marsha, I wanted to put in breakout room 2 because there's only 2 students there, I would hover over her name and I can move her to that room. So when I click move to, it'll say, where do you want to move her? And I'll say breakout room 2. This here is where you can broadcast the message to everyone. And that message appears at the top, and I'll try to broadcast one to you while you're in there. It appears at the top and it doesn't stay up there the whole time. So this might be like, hey guys, 5 more minutes, or hey guys, these are the things I wanted you to talk about, don't forget, something like that. It doesn't stay and it's not a chat, so keep that in mind. Additionally, on this window back here, before you've launched, there is this options drop down, and that's where you can choose how much time they get before, whether or not you want the room to close automatically or if you're going to close the room when you're ready. Also, by default, when I close the room, it gives you guys 60 seconds to get back to the main room so that you can wrap up your conversation. I can change that 60 seconds in these options here too. So in the options is where you can change some of the features that you have. And then in the recreate section is where if you or half your class is going to be doing 4 groups of, or 10 groups of 4, and the other class is going to be, you want 2 people each, so I might have 20 breakout rooms. I'd have to recreate my settings, basically revert to this so I can choose a different number of rooms that I want everyone to break out into. Just checking the chat. Okay, so in this breakout room group work that I'm going to have you do an experience, I'm going to break you out into groups of 4, and once I open the rooms, you're going to be prompted to join, because that's how I've set it up, where you have to manually click on the link to go into your breakout room. In your group, I want you to discuss the following, and I want you to choose one to share, each of you, first, and if there's time, you can share another. But essentially, I want you to share with each other what's one thing you discovered that helps you with your Zoom burnout, especially if you've been doing this all summer. What have you found that has helped you? And the second thing is, what is one thing that's surprised you, either an advantage or a challenge with using Zoom? I'll give you guys 5 minutes to discuss, and there's different ways that you guys can certainly come on the mic and the camera and just chit-chat all along. If you want to try different things, someone can also share the whiteboard and you guys can play around with that to experience it. But I'm imagining what most often happens is the round robin, where everyone comes on the mic, someone becomes a leader, and you guys just kind of share your stuff. So I'm going to give you guys, are there any questions before I send you out into breakout rooms? I should start with that. I'm going to put this in the questions in the chat really fast. And I'll broadcast them out to you too. Okay. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to open those rooms and I'll bring you back in a little bit. I might be popping into your rooms, just as an FYI. Did you guys not get invites to join a room? Welcome back. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have here in my notes that the presenter is supposed to be Maureen Bolland. But maybe
I took over.
Oh, you took over? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, no problem.
I did, but I saw her name in here, so she's in here listening too. If it's something that if you had a question for her.
No.
Hi, everyone. You're in the right place. Yes,
Okay,
Professor.
all right.
You're in the right place. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
I can tell when people were having really good conversations when you don't come back right away from the breakout room, when you wait for that whole 60 seconds to pass. So I hope you guys had a chance to share. I'm going to mute everyone again, but then I'm going to let you guys come off of mute. And what I'm interested in, first I'm going to mute you all, and then I'll let you come off of mute. I'm interested in how that, if someone can share, we don't need to go through every group, but if there was something that you heard on your group that really motivated you, or something that you can use that you think was a really useful tool that someone else shared in your group. So whoever wants to go, you can raise your hand if you're on camera, or you can raise your hand virtually in the participant window, or you can chat it. I'd love to hear what was shared.
Hello, this is Adeniki.
Hi.
Can you hear me, Elissa?
Yes,
Yeah,
I can.
I like it, because it allows us to break our students into groups so they are able to actually interact. Okay, and it breaks the monotony, monotony of you just teaching and teaching. It brings more. It brings you together. It connects you more, to your students. I like it.
Thank you. Wonderful. Luckner, did you want to share? Oh, and then Lena.
Oh, Lena, okay.
Luckner, you first, and then Lena.
Okay.
Lena, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Miss Cromwell. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Luckner. I'm an instructor. I'm a chemistry instructor. So over the course of the summer, after the chemistry course, and at first, I was hesitant because I've heard about the breakout rooms, but I never had a chance to use it. But I said, well, let me give it a try. And then, and at one time after I did the lecture, and I, and I decided to, I find it much easier to use the breakout room as far as students engagement, because if I were to use it like, because everything is done remotely, so it's kind of difficult to really get everybody involved at the same time. So the breakout rooms to me seems like a very useful tool, and I've used it, and I like the positive feedback I get from it, because you get the students to really get engaged as far as working out together in small groups, and after that, and once everybody kind of goes through the exercise and do whatever they have to do, and then they will come back and share with us their experience. So it was a very grateful experience, and I intend to use it over the course of the fall semester.
Great, thank you. And Lana, and tell me how to pronounce your name.
That's it.
Lana,
it's
got
Lana. It's Lana if you're American. It's Lana if you're Canadian. So I go. Lana's fine. So what's
Lana,
the question on breakout rooms, or one thing that helped with Zoom fatigue? Zoom burnout.
So something that was shared during your breakout room something that was shared that helps you break Zoom fatigue.
Okay, I make sure that I give my students a break at least every 45 minutes to 50 minutes for myself. That gives me a break, and also for them. And yeah, that's one thing. And I do use breakout rooms every day.
That's great. Wonderful. We have time for one more person to share if anyone else wants to share. Yeah, Martha, go ahead. I see you. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. What I would like to know is, how do you get into the rooms, you as a host,
Yeah. So in the screen, I'm going to show you a screenshot of it. So when you launch the rooms, once they're open, you see this window here when you have the breakout room kind of tool open. And there's this blue button here that says join for each room. And so that's how you join each one at a time.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I do want to make sure that we get to the Brightspace features. So I'm going to move forward. And luckily the Brightspace ones, well, luckily for me, that they're less interactive, meaning I can just show you the things and really excite you, hopefully. And then we'll have time for questions. So I should be able to get through those in the 10 minutes that we have and then 10 minutes for questions. So real quick before I shift to Zoom, and some of you guys are, before I shift to Brightspace, and some of you guys have already talked about these things, but just some reminders for class success when it comes to Zoom and the ways that you're using Zoom is to think about, and this was a suggestion from another instructor, is how you want to establish your class rules for a virtual environment, being respectful of other students who might be talking, and when you're doing group work or when you're doing classwork. And if you come up with these as a class, it can help have buy-in that everyone's trying to respect each other. They're coming to class dressed appropriately, and they're not, lying in bed while you're having a class session. Avoid long lectures. You do want to be strategic about your breaks, like Lana provided. Think about how you can use Zoom to promote active learning. All of you guys already have started doing this. We've heard even from the people who came on the mic in terms of using breakout rooms to really engage students and using it to create this culture of engagement and foster community, because it is really the only time that students are able to physically connect with you and each other. So keep that in mind. It is that space to really build that bond, as opposed to being in the classroom. We take for granted that students are having those conversations with each other all the time. In a virtual environment, they're not. And so you're providing that during these Zoom sessions. Okay, let's shift to Brightspace. Okay, so there's 4 things that we're going to talk about in Brightspace, and I'm going to try to show you those, show you them or talk about them, so depending on what it is. Real quick to kind of talk through these 4 tips is, first is there's a way to do in Brightspace some fast feedback that can save you time, so that you don't have to write individual paragraphs to every single student. If you have generally like 3 different types of feedback that you provide based on student homework or papers that they've written or whatever it might be, you can store that feedback outside of Brightspace, but there's a way to easily paste that and post it for multiple students at a time. So I'm going to show you that. There's also a feature with the feedback, and I'm going to highlight, there's a training tomorrow that Maureen, my colleague, Maureen Boland, is doing. I can't remember what it's called. It's something with feedback is in the title. And maybe she can come on the mic and remind me of what it's called. But tomorrow at 1, I believe, she's doing a feedback training that covers all of these things in further detail. But there's an audio feedback tool and a video note feedback tool, which if you've ever used video note just in general, while you're providing feedback, so while you're grading their papers, you're grading assignments that they've submitted, or you're grading discussions, whatever it might be, you can add video note feedback. So there's a tool in Brightspace called Video Notes that when you launch that, you're just recording right on the screen, your face, your sound, your audio, and that's a lot easier than typing out your feedback, and it gives students kind of a connection with you. So it makes it a lot.
I'm so sorry. Can you show us where that feedback video is?
I will. I'm just going through the 4 before I go to Brightspace. Thank you. The second tip is using auto-graded assessments, and this is essentially the quizzes tool in Brightspace. So the quizzes tool, many of you may already be familiar with it. It's a way to build your tests in Brightspace, but it's not just limited to tests or quizzes, how you think of those things. You can use a quiz, even though it's a quiz in Brightspace, you can use that tool to create, not daily, but your weekly 5-question, just like, I don't want to call it pop quiz, but 5-question, how are you doing kind of thing, or like, did you do the reading? So here's my 5-question kind of assessment if you did the reading. And those questions can be auto-graded if you're using multiple choice or matching or fill-in, any of the question types that a quiz can have. You can use the quiz tool for that, and then it's auto-graded, and it saves you from having to like check their work, right? Because the system can grade it automatically. I'm not going to talk about quiz generators, but if you do have all of these things already in Word documents, you cannot actually just import those into a Brightspace quiz and it convert it for you. But there are outside tools that can convert your Word document into something that Brightspace can read. And there's a knowledge base article on that. So I'll send that when I send out this recording as well. Then there's group work. So group work is separate from our Zoom group work, which is kind of just to have discussions on the fly, and I send them out and they come back. I can't necessarily save those same breakout rooms with the same people, because in Zoom, it's always a different, potentially a different group of people, because some students may not have come in, some students might be absent, or you want to, you know, change it up. But in Brightspace, you can create groups that are the same all semester, and those are those students' groups. And you can use group discussions or group assignments, and that can cut down on your amount of grading as well, because it lets you assess one thing per group as opposed to having to assess every single student. And then another way to break Brightspace burnout is if you are having a lot of discussions, virtual discussions in Brightspace using the discussions tool, there is these rating scales, which I'm going to show you, that let students kind of give props to students, or you can give props to students, meaning like a thumbs up or a 5-star rating. You can use these kinds of things to kind of gauge the discussion boards too, without having to like message every single student in the discussion. You kind of let them self-regulate. So let's quickly go into Brightspace and see these things. Now I have to find where my window was. Here it is. Okay. So first, let's just talk about that bulk feedback. So if you're grading things, I'm going to go into the grade section. And let's say I know that I've read all of these discussions as they came in. So by the time I'm ready to grade them, I already have an idea of how all my students did. So I already kind of know what's happening. So in the grade book, if I want to grade just this discussion at once, I'm going to click that drop-down arrow and choose Enter Grades, where I'm going to see all of the places where I can put my scores in. I can use these links over here where I can actually see what they've discussed, what their actual discussion response is. And here's where I can provide some feedback. So one of the things that I can do on this page is really helpful. If this is a discussion where it's just they did it or they didn't do it, and you're really going based off of that, you can select everybody at once. Let's say all 3 of them did it. Well, in this case, one of them didn't. So I'm going to uncheck the one that didn't. And I can choose set grades and basically give everyone who I've checked off the same score. So this is one of these assignments where everyone did it. They all get the points. I'm going to set those grades, and then I'll click Save, so that I do all of them at once without having to go down my list going 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. The other thing I can do here is provide feedback. So if I have a good job, well done, you're doing fantastic kind of feedback, I can do the same thing, where I can check everyone off that I want to give that feedback to. I'm going to uncheck the last guy because he didn't do it. And then I'm going to click this Add Feedback. And what's going to do is, again, it's going to add this feedback to all of these students. So I'm going to say, well done, whatever it might be. If I just have those words that I like to, those phrases that I like to use, and then it added that feedback to all those students without me having to do it one at a time. So that's the adding feedback in bulk. Hold on, I'm not going to leave this page because I want to show you the video note. So if I am needing to assess their discussions, which typically you are, oh, this is a bad example because it has a rubric. Let me go back to an assignment. So I'm going to grade, this time I'm grading an assignment. That video note tool that I talked about is when I'm going to click on their assignment. So I'm viewing their assignment here. And over here is where I can type feedback that's well done. I can use these annotation tools, but really I can also record video, or I can use the insert stuff and add my video note. Record video and the video note are basically the same tool. So when I choose Add Video Note, and let me turn off my camera here. I have to do it again because I didn't turn my camera off fast enough. It's going to pop me in here, and I can literally just talk over their paper. So I'm going to pull it to the side so I can still see their paper. Maybe, you know, it leaves it in this window, so you kind of have to know what you want to say. But you can say, George, you did a really great job in this paper. You just missed these 5 points, but I want you to know you're really on the right track, and blah, blah, blah. And then when you click stop recording, it repeats it back to you. And then you click next. This is for ADA compliance, so you do want to give it a title. This is, you know, George's feedback, a description. You can add transcripts right here. So it's English, automatically generate captions. And I'm going to insert that. It's going to process a little bit, but if I just click update, it's going to be there. And we'll have to wait for it to process. But that's how you add the video note on the fly so that you don't have to type in all of the things. You can just talk to your students. It's a really nice tool. So that's the video note. Yes. I want to get through, actually, I want to get through these things and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay. Okay, so then with the auto-graded quizzes, I'm not going to go through the quizzing tool, but I'm just going to remind you where the quizzing tool is. It's here in Brightspace under our assessments tool, quizzes, and this is where you can create categories where it groups your different activities. So if they weren't all tests, but you're using the quizzes tool for other things, you can use categories to kind of define those, and then use the quizzes tool for auto-graded assessments so you don't have to manually grade all of those. For group work, let me skip group work for a second and do the grading scale or the rating scales on the discussions, because groups we can spend a little bit more time on. Oh, long window. When you're using discussions, I'm going to edit one of these. There's this option down here that is by default no ratings, but it lets you choose a 5-star rating scheme, which means students can, you know, rate each other's posts up to 5 stars, 1 to 5 stars. Something like that might be used for if I want my students to give recommendations for how we're going to do, what days they want our live lectures on and what days they want our discussions on or something like that. And then they can like upvote kind of thing. The 5-star rating could be used for that. Like, this is my favorite idea, and then this is my less favorite idea, and whatever. You want to be careful about that because you don't want it to turn into rating a student's post per se, because that could be hurtful. And that's where you might use something like the upvote only rating scheme. So it gives you the ability to like thumbs up or plus a post. And so then you can see how many posts got the most upvotes. And that's helpful too for students if they don't, you know, they're replying to other students, but they don't want to reply to everyone. It gives them an opportunity once they've done the replies that are required, that they can give someone else kind of like a plus, like, hey, I read your thing and I liked it, but they don't have to manually like write a response. So those are the discussion rating posts. When it comes to groups is kind of a more involved tool. You have to play around with it at first to kind of understand it. So we can't go through it today. But under the course admin tool, this is where you will find groups under the learner management section. And in this class, I happen to have some groups set up. So I know that I'm going to have group presentations. So that's my category. And when I've set that up, I indicated I'm going to have 3 groups. And these are my members of those groups. And then I can set up group assignments or group discussions. And then they only see those discussions that their group has been assigned to. So then they can interact with each other kind of freely without, or they can submit to assignments together, and that shows up for you that you only have to grade it once. So I'm going to stop there because we have like 4 minutes left, and now I will open it up for questions. There's a maximum number of minutes in record video. For the video note, Martha, give me 1 second. Just there's a question in the chat about the maximum number of minutes in the video note. There's a maximum of 60 minutes, but I do not recommend you use that 60 minutes. Video notes are meant to be really short, kind of like, hey, messages. Martha and then Tanya. Go ahead, Martha.
Mine is not really a question, but a suggestion. You are really great. But I think that your time is limited, and I don't know if all of us were able to grasp everything you say, which is very
That's why I'm recording it, so that you can then rewind it and slow me down. So in the recording, you can actually even slow down me talking.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. This is Denike, Elissa. Do we get the recording Or are you
Yes,
able
I will
to
send this.
schedule another session for us? Because
I will send you
received
the
a few of yours already, Elissa. They're in my email.
Right. I am sending the recording after these, and we're posting them on Brightspace resources. Before we get into that, though, I want to answer questions that have come up. So, Tanya, you're next. Or your hand was raised. I don't know if you still have a question.
Right, I do.
Okay.
I missed it. Like, so you do the video voice recording, and then did you upload it or copy it into the text box?
Oh,
or
it
automatically does that?
It automatically, it's where it was saying it was processed. So let me go back to that. And again, I kind of went over it because, I mean, I glossed over it because it's something that we've covered more heavily in other trainings. But now it's there. It was just processing after I did it. I just had to wait longer before it showed up. You would say, George, you did a really great job in this paper. So it literally just puts it right inside of there when I did it. So I want to note there is a difference between this record video button and using the insert stuff, add video note. They're both using the same tool, but this one the student has to like open a separate link, and this one they see it right in the message where you're putting the feedback, like where you're texting it, where you're typing feedback, whether or not you type feedback. Did that answer? Tonya?
Yes, thank you.
I can't see you if you're nodding. Yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if I have, Professor someone else has their hand raised. Yes.
Some students use their phones to access Zoom. When we have video notes or any other video communication, does it use their data?
If they're using their phone to access Zoom or Brightspace, or are you talking about Brightspace? I can answer for both. If they don't have Wi-Fi at home, then yes, it's using their data. If they have Wi-Fi at home and they connect their phone to their Wi-Fi, it's not using their data, it's using their Wi-Fi.
So should we suggest that they have to connect their phone to Wi-Fi and not use their data? Because
it depends. Some people have unlimited data these days. Some I don't, but it comes pretty common with some cell phones. So it's recommended. They're going to get a much better experience to connect to their, well, it depends on how their Wi-Fi is. I don't know if I would give a recommendation, but let them know if they're not connecting on their phone to their Wi-Fi, they know that it's using their data because they will run out of data.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, can you show us one more time how to do a video note?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Video notes can happen so it's not just for feedback. Were you interested in just video notes for feedback or just generally anywhere in Brightspace that you can add a video note?
From feedback, from where you are right now.
Okay.
Insert stuff.
Insert stuff. It's this little triangle here. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
It's this little triangle here. In the pop-up, it says add video note. And it's because I have my video on. Give me 1 second. I have to turn off my video. Insert stuff, add video note, and then it'll either ask you for permission to connect to your video or it'll automatically connect to your video. You click new recording and you start your recording. You talk to the screen. When you're done, you click stop recording. It'll play it back to you. And then don't click new recording again because that'll override what you have. You click next to get to the next screens in order to save it.
Okay, so you have to be very fast before you start the new recording, right? Before this blue
No. As soon as you click stop recording, it immediately starts playing it back to you. And then you never click new recording again because that's going to override. So the step is once you've done it and you're happy with it, after it plays it back to you and you're like, that's cool, then you click next.
I see.
I just warn you of this because it's really easy to, you've recorded, you're like, oh, that's great. And then you hit new recording and it did not save your recording because you're recording over it.
So this one just
and you might. you might learn that the hard way.
Thank you.
So if I go back to it and I click new recording, it says stop. So this is me, I'm recording this right now, blah, blah, blah. It should be a red button instead of another blue button because that can be confusing. But then I stop recording, it plays it back to me. I'm recording this right now, blah, blah, blah. It plays it back to me so I can watch the whole thing. I have the button to do a new recording if I didn't like it. But if I did like it, I click next.
Next. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Play with it. It's really fun. Anywhere you have this HTML editor, so announcements, content, assignments, anywhere you have this where you can put text feedback, you have the ability to add a video note. Someone asked in the chat to show them the whiteboard in Zoom. The whiteboard in Zoom is not my favorite thing, but when you click share, you have an option to choose which application you're trying to share, or there's the option for a whiteboard. So when you choose to share that whiteboard, it's basically a blank screen that all of you all can write on and interact with. So it's basically all in front of us, and everything we're doing, everyone can see. For you to be able to write on it as a student, or for your students to be able to write on it, there's a view option. Oh, and I just realized we're over time, and someone else, there's another trainer in here. You guys, I completely forgot there's a training after mine. I need to stop this.
Yeah, that's why people.
Let me stop the recording.
No,